You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to the writingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Writing Community Chat Show. We have got a fantastic guest lined up for you tonight with a great book series that I'm sure you're going to love, and we've got a lot to talk about in that series, from writing novels and novellas all the way through that series. It's going to be interesting to find out the ins and outs of that story. And we've had a great week. We had a brilliant show last week with Tim Leben. It was fantastic. We've also released a couple more of our music videos that you can write to and relax to. If you haven't checked that out, go on our YouTube channel and check out our playlist with the relaxing videos. It's a great companion to write to if you're kind of getting into writing with music, and if you like writing with music that's kind of relaxed and chilled out, that's definitely for you. And I am here with my co-host, Mr. Hooley, who's got a fantastic new haircut. How are you doing, Chris Hooley?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. You?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm sporting the WCCS cap on my head right now. I'm not sure. It's the first time I've tried it out. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'm good. I've had a good week. It's been very busy. Work has been crazy and good. Apart from that, I'm very excited to be on the show. It's Friday, and that's the best bit of the week for me, getting to do this show and speaking to some brilliant people.
Yeah, and we often say on the show that we are blessed with guests, and tonight is definitely no different. He's one of the best writers in the world, in my opinion, at the moment. So it's an absolute why can't I speak? Privilege to have him on the show and chat to him and get to pick his brains about writing and craft. And, you know, I'm sure we're going to learn a lot, as well as get a lot of insight into the fantastic Rivers of London series as well, which, you know, has got a great following. A lot of cult fans out there as well that are massively into the series. So hopefully we'll get some really good questions in the community questions space. And yeah, if you're a fan of Ben's work, I'm sure you're definitely going to enjoy this episode.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm sure it'll be great. And the Rivers of London, what really intrigues me about that is the kind of environment of London that is used in the stories. So interested to pick the brains of Ben and talk about all that stuff. So what's been happening, Chris? Any news about anything in general? I mean, the weather in Britain's been rubbish as usual, but it is getting lighter, and that's a great thing for us. Summer is coming, and I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've just been focused on Ben coming on Friday, because I'm like, oh my God, it's so exciting. And people that I work with as well have gone, oh my God, like, I love his books. And, you know, it's great to finally be here. And, you know, in the past, we've had some brilliant writers on that I've admired from a distance. And, you know, I've looked at their books on my shelf and I enjoyed them. And I thought, I wonder if we could speak to them. And you know, sometimes it happens. And that's great. And tonight is one of those occasions. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
It's really interesting. And I'm very grateful for this, that Ben and his, I don't know what the word is, our communication person. That's a great example. Before Christmas, when we talked about this show happening and things developed, Ben actually sent in a bunch of books for my local prison and delivered them to, he didn't deliver them, but I took them to my local prison, where the young offenders actually got those as a Christmas gift, which is absolutely incredible and wonderful. Not many of them did read it, because let's be honest, not everybody's a reader, especially in the youth today. Hopefully that does change, but in the circumstances of where it was, there was a couple of people who got into it and said they did enjoy it, or what they've read so far. So hopefully that will pick up more. And you know, that is such a generous thing to do, and great to kind of connect with those young people that have not had the best fortunate kind of life. So that was wonderful. So before this interview has even started, Ben has made a good impact on the community. And as the Writing Community Chat Show, we're all about community. What we're developing behind the scenes is massively about the creative community. So this is wonderful for us to kind of have Ben support everybody like that. And yeah, really excited to get into this conversation.
Yeah, to be honest, I think we should stop waffling and bring the man on himself and have a little chat to him and enjoy the next hour.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, please welcome the brilliant mind behind the captivating Rivers of London series. Born and bred in London, Ben's journey from writing for his iconic shows like Doctor Who, by the way, to crafting his own enchanting tales is nothing short of inspiring. Get ready to delve into the mystical depths of London mysteries as we explore his fascinating career and delving to the secrets behind his beloved novels. So without further ado, please welcome Ben Aaronovitch. Hello, Ben. How are you doing?
Hello.
Hello. Are you all good?
Yes, I'm good. I love this whole thing where the publicists gloss over the dreadful section of my career which was just shit. And they go, he wrote for Doctor Who and other stuff. And then there was a period where he didn't do anything for about 20 years, and then he wrote some novels. And that's basically my career. Disappointing. I had that kind of like terrible, mid-act with second act kind of decline, followed by further decline, then followed by a resurgence at the end, which I suppose in a genre sense makes me the lucky fool protagonist, who fails all the way through until the final act.
Well, so Ben, this show has always displayed people's careers, and what we've always enjoyed about this is how people can relate to it. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of people out there who have had initial success and they've dipped down and they're trying to get back onto that road. So I'm sure some of the stuff you talk about could be really valuable for them as well.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you got to think. I mean, I was a screenwriter, so obviously I started as a screenwriter. And the thing about screenwriting is like a bus, right? You get on the bus, and once you're on the bus, you can move around the bus. So you have to get on the bus, and then all your effort is getting on the bus. But if you get off the bus, if you're knocked off the bus, in my case, you find yourself lying in the rain on the tarmac with the bus disappearing up the road in front of you. And it takes a long time to get the bus. You have to run after the bus or cajole the bus, or in my case, get on a different bus, which is what I did.
Yeah, I've never heard it in that example. And chasing the bus, I think we're all chasing the bus at the moment.
Oh, well, anyone in writing who's freelance is chasing the bloody bus. Let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, before we get into all of the bus chasing, where in the world are you coming from? I'm assuming London?
Yeah, I am a Londoner. I am a complete Londoner. As a Londoner, I'm the only person in the entire country gets asked why he writes in his own hometown. Because, if you're from Bolton and you set your books in Bolton, everyone goes, oh, yes, he totally set it in his native Bolton. Liverpool. No one gets to Ian Rankin. Why do you set all your books in Edinburgh? No. They go, yeah. But if you're from London, they go, why do you set your books in London? Because, I'm going to go and learn a totally different city. Because that makes sense.
I mean, you write what you know and what you experience, and your life experience plays massively into writing authentic novels. So I don't see why that's an issue.
That difficult first novel where you have to do it while you're still working full time, right? You don't have time to go and learn another, unless you've got like a cushy academic job or something. So
absolutely.
So Ben, take us back, if you will, to obviously you talked about being a screenwriter, but can you remember the moment where you wanted to be a writer and how that sort of transpired? Because obviously you talk about chasing the bus.
It's a sad tale of frustration. I wanted to be a special effects designer back in the days when special effects was models and wires and very dodgy CSO color separation overlay. But unfortunately, I'm crap at models and I'm colorblind. And I'm very not hardworking when it comes to actually doing things with my hands. So I thought, actually, I've obviously got an imagination. Like, what can I do? I thought, and you're watching television, like thousands of people must have started, millions of people must have started. You're watching television, you think, fuck me, I could do this.
Yeah.
Right? I'm better. Right? This is crap. I can do better than this. And of course you can't, or usually the first 6 or 7 attempts anyway. I just started writing scripts. It took me about 3-4 years to the point, this is from about like 20 to 24, 23. I don't know. But it's so long ago now that I can't remember. I had a horrible moment when I realized that when I wrote for Doctor Who, it was older than I was. It was 25 and I was 24. And I've just realized now that that was 30 years ago. So I'm like, fuck. It's
brilliant.
You know, I remember things like 3-day weeks. I tried to
can you imagine that?
And he just looked at me like, I did a whole section, which was a nostalgic look back to Abigail's party, and like no one got the jokes. No one remembers Abigail's party except for old people. So where was I? What was I talking about? Yeah, right. So I was writing scripts, and you know, you do the usual. This is back before the internet. And so when I say I was writing scripts, I mean I was writing scripts on a typewriter.
Wow.
With carbon papers, okay, and which is good discipline, I might add. So I did that, and the trick I was told at the time was, in the old days before VHS, remember, what you did is you sat there with your notepad, and as the name of the script editor went up at the end of the credits, you made a note of the script editor. So you found shows that you liked or you thought was in your wheelhouse as a writer, and you noted down the script editor, and then you submitted a spec script, or it didn't really matter whether it's a spec script of their thing or just a spec script to show off your work, in the proper format. Very important. I put a red cover on mine, which apparently got it to the top of the pile. We can't do that anymore. So you submit scripts, and then they, you know, if they like what they read, they bring you in. And in my case, a script editor called Caroline Alton was developing a project called South of the River at the time, for those of you who are that old. She said, what do you like? And I said, science fiction and crime, which you'll notice is a theme in my life. And she said, well, write one script for Doctor Who, one script for Rockcliffe's Babies, another show that nobody remembers, and I'll hand them over to the script editor. And I handed them over to the script editor, and had Rockcliffe's Babies gone for another season, I would have written for that. And I wrote for Doctor Who, and that's basically how it happened. And it was just luck. It's like, how did you become a writer? Luck. The thing about trying to become a writer is it just looks impossible until you do it, and then it looks inevitable.
Yeah.
And you're going, well, obviously I became a writer. I'm just so talented that it was, you know. And by the time you find out you're not as talented as you think you are, of course, you've already done about 4 scripts. Fine. I'm not as talented as I thought I was, but I faked it long enough to get in.
I love that. It's interesting to think, though, when you're watching something and you think, and we've done this as authors for books, and you know, I'm doubling screenplays. Sometimes you do watch something or read something and you think you can do better. So how did you approach your first screenplay, thinking you can do better? Was there any surprising struggles when you started actually doing that process?
You just do it with the magnificent arrogance of youth, don't you? You just go, I am a genius! I will write this script. It will be the best thing ever. And if you're lucky, it's quite good. If you're unlucky, it's not. But you think it's brilliant, whatever happens, right? And it's not until you've got some proper writing under your belts, actually seen television being made and all the other technical things, that you realize you just got lucky, kid, basically. I mean, it helps. You've got to have a certain amount of talent, and you've got to know what the script format is. But that, you know, especially when you're doing it on a manual typewriter, the script format's not really that complicated, because it was developed for people using manual typewriters. All you're doing with Final Draft is like something that pretends to be a manual typewriter, but gets you shortcuts, which is quite good.
But what happens when you're using a typewriter and you make an error?
Well, what you do is you write by hand first.
Okay.
And then you write the script with the type. I mean, I'm sure like hacks in Hollywood could just go tung, 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 tung. But when you start out, no, you write the script out first. But I didn't know anything about structure, 4-act structure. That was like a foreign language to me. I didn't know anything about that. But I had, watched a tremendous amount of television because I had no life. And therefore, I knew what to do. You just know what to do because you've watched a lot of television.
I mean, now we've got the benefit of YouTube tutorials and things like that are very accessible, very quickly used. Whereas at that time, your screenwriting experience was there was nothing to refer to.
Yeah, but that's not always a good thing, right? At a certain point, you have to kind of take off the training wheels and launch yourself into space. To mess up two metaphors at once, and well, I'm a writer. Two metaphors, and and also they contradict each other. And so you can overdo it. Yeah, there's some good books out there. I mean, but my basic career started not reading books because I was just broke. Apart from anything else, couldn't afford them. I was when you had to buy. Your library didn't have them. Your local library didn't have books on screenwriting when I was young. They do now. I went and looked the other day, but no, not in those days. So once you've gone through Sid Meier's, how to write screenplays, and if you're really kind of weird, you can scrape up the money, done the story course or something. Then it comes down to just writing, and just keep writing until you get better. And because you can watch these programs make you want to do things, right? So I literally just watched a YouTube video on things not to do in a romantic comedy, and immediately wanted to run off and write a romantic comedy, which is very bad. I'm not currently supposed to be writing a romantic comedy, especially not a scripted one, especially not one set in America, right? So it's like, shit. So I had to kind of like bang my head until I got back into like the headspace of the books. So you should write. This is the advice I give to everyone. I've distilled my writing advice down to two things now. It's basically one, this applies to novels because I've got now vastly more experience with novels, and the script writing world is completely different from when I was writing scripts. So most of my advice doesn't apply. One, write the novel you want to write the thing you want to write. Okay, you will not hit the zeitgeist. The zeitgeist always freaking moves before you can hit it. And write the novel you want to write, and buy a really good chair.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going to spend, if you want to become a professional writer, you're going to spend 30 years in that bloody chair. Trust me.
It's great advice.
You will thank me in 20 years when you've bought that chair and you have.
Do you know, going back to what you said earlier about kind of almost faking it to making it or getting on the bus, I can't help but compare that to a previous interview we had with John Niven, who at the point said he just feels like what he wanted out of his career was to keep writing because he feels like he's going to get caught out. And in my head, when you said about the bus scenario, was that he's sat on the bus without a ticket and he's waiting for the inspector to come and say, you haven't got a ticket, get off. And that point to me was proving that even if you're one of the best authors in the world, you still feel like, you're trying to make it or you're trying to get through that process.
I've never had imposter syndrome. My native arrogance has sort of seen me very well, especially in the world of television. I mean, it probably did. It probably got me kicked out of television in the first instance, but it's seen me very well. Whenever I've got to write something and I'm seriously writing something, my natural born arrogance has served me very well. You just got to think what you're writing is worth reading. Otherwise, why are you writing it? And you must let someone else tell you otherwise. Now, this means, of course, you could be writing drivel and absolutely convinced it was great, but that's just at least you have.
See, Ben, this is a reel to reel like moment for me because I'm talking to you and I can see that it's Ben, but I'm hearing a lot of Peter. And I can. I've not. I mean, you may not take that as a compliment, but how much do you put into your characters of yourself? And when we go, I was going to say when we go back to the fact that you said about getting off the bus, writing the novel that you wanted to write. Rivers of London obviously is set in London, in your hometown, but the idea is it seems like something so beyond a first novel. Like it, when you read the very first one, it's almost like you were setting up a series right from the very first one. And I don't know if that was something that you consciously planned or something that's happened organically over time. And I just kind of wanted to pick your brains on those two elements.
That comes in 2 points. So the practical and the romantic. Okay. One, it was not my first novel. I'd actually written 3.5 novels by that point. So I had made all my mistakes. I had written my novel in the style of William Gibson, my novel in the style of Ian M. Banks, and my novel, which I didn't finish and had to be finished by somebody else. So I had done a lot of that stuff that you have to do. A lot of that stuff you have to get out of your system. You have to write like the favorite person. And I got paid for it, which is like a really good position to be in, where you get paid to make you kind of write your juvenile novels. So that's one of the reasons. So that's probably one of the reasons why the novel felt like very assured. Also, I lucked into the voice. I came out with Peter Grant's voice, and I wrote the first 4 pages of the first novel. At that point, I had no idea why someone's head was being knocked off in Covent Garden. I hadn't worked out any of the details at that point, right? But I read that voice, and I thought, "Fuck me, this will sell." And this is where the actually having been in the industry for 30 years comes. You when you get hold of something that you know, and I don't mean to people, because I didn't expect it to sell as well to the audience, but I knew it would get through the gatekeepers. I knew as soon as I had that first 4 pages, all I had to do was write an entire novel, and I could at least get an advance, which is, given that I was going bankrupt, which is what I was really aiming for at the time. And as to the thing, remember, I was a bookseller while I was writing this, so I knew about shelf presence, and the evil truth of shelf presence is you want up to 3 books on the shelf at a time. Okay, that's very important, because the bookseller, i.e. me, looks at their shelf, and you can lose like the one book. You've got one slim volume, right? You if it goes, you don't notice it's gone, right? It's just that that bad, right? If you have a series of books and you've got 2 and 3, you think, oh, I better get one. You better order in number 1, right? And as you get longer, now I take up the whole of the shelf after anthologies now. I'm in constant struggle with J. Abercrombie for that shelf that's one down from the first bay, and me and Joe fighting for the first shelf. So I knew that. I also knew that the publishers like to hear it's a series. They like a series for that first book. So I told them it was a series, even though I really didn't know what was going to happen in the next couple of books.
I love that.
Brilliant.
I mean, and so, but also I like a police procedural, a detective story is intrinsically going to be a series. I was thinking about Ed McBain. I was thinking about Morse. I was thinking about, Poirot and all the other detectives. That's what I was thinking about when I wrote it. And so therefore it was intrinsically going to be a series. The beauty of a detective story is that the detective doesn't undergo very much in the way of character development. You see, they don't burn out. If you have like a normal protagonist, they have to have some kind of experience and then closure at the end, right? And if you keep doing that, they run out of mothers to die and daughters to miscarry and stuff like that. But your classic detective doesn't need to do that. They can just get on with it. Mine has kind of veered slightly into soap opera territory because he just does that to annoy me, I think, personally.
Do you know what I love? Sorry, Chris. I'm going to jump in it very quickly.
Yeah, go for it.
You might not have seen this, but on Ben's website is a glossary for Peter Grant. Have you seen it?
No.
So there's a brilliant glossary for Peter Grant, which is obviously the main character. The second line down is a glossary about dogging. So if you want to know what dogging is all about, you can read it right there.
Yeah, dogging was a bit of a surprise to me because, like, as a London boy who doesn't have a car, dogging was not something I was ever exposed to. In fact, I don't think it actually, when I was young and stupid and sexually active enough to do that, it wasn't an option. So I only found out about dogging when I was researching number 5.
Okay.
Wow.
I was researching number 5, and I was out in the countryside where dogging happens a lot, right? And I was in Herefordshire, and the great thing, I can't drive, you see, so I had to get taxis everywhere, which turned out to be a real boom because the working class population of places like rural working class population of Herefordshire have all been pushed out of the villages so that computer programmers can live there, and God knows weird demographics those villages have now, but they're all taxi drivers. They're all taxi drivers, hairdressers, or metal bashers. That's basically the professions they're now in. But they all grew up in that area, and of course, the taxi drivers know the area very well. So I was driving out, and I wanted to visit this place called Birch's Common, I said, "Can you take me up Birch's Common?" He said, "Oh yeah, that's the dogging area." And I went, "Oh, okay. What's dogging?" Because for me, dogging is what you do with a dog. I mean, okay.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
went up, and then as soon as he said that, and as soon as I found out what dogging was, I thought that's going in the book.
yeah.
That's totally going in the book now. And
I mean, it makes a lot of sense for someone growing up in London. It's very rural. There's not urban. There's not very many places where that I imagine could happen.
well, not where cishet males go, right? I mean, and cishet women, because obviously cussaging goes on all over London, but or did, back when there were Ivy Clubs. But I wasn't so inclined, and so therefore. I didn't know I didn't know what dogging was. And that specific thing where you do it in cars, you park your car up and you wander around the field, just seems like hard work to me. Totally.
Yeah, of course. And it's not the same getting there in a taxi and doing it, is it?
In our climate, let's be serious, right?
It's steamy windows.
Rained on as anything else.
So the people that are watching or listening from America, in London they do cottaging. In the countryside, there's people dogging everywhere.
I love the fact that a lot of our American listeners won't know what those two things are, and we'll have to go and research them, which is great. We won't tell you anymore. Go and Google it. Put that in your history.
I decided from a very early stage not to worry about what Americans did or did not understand. Not because I don't like Americans, but because my analysis is that to be successful in America, you can't compromise. You have to be really even more yourself than normal. Because I remember this because Lou Grade used to make these films with Coburn in them, and they used to be like he would have an American star so that they would attract the Americans. They did shit business, so it doesn't work. But you think about what the films that were really successful, like Chariots of Fire and things like that, Monty Python. And things like that, right? These are very, very, very British things. And so therefore I thought, right, I'm not going to compromise, and they either like it or they don't. And it turned out they didn't. Well, there you go. I don't care.
So Ben, the question that I was going to ask is I gave Rivers of London to like friends after I'd read it and stuff. And I said, you need to read this book. And two of my friends are police officers. And they said, he gets a lot of things accurate about police officers. Was he an ex-copper? And I want to ask you about like how you navigate the police procedural side of it. Do you have people that you can reach out to? Is it all research? Have you had any experience in the police?
Me personally, no. I mean, I got arrested once. If that counts.
Hey.
I have now because I'm a well successful author. So I went in to have a cyst removed from my back, and the surgeon went, "Oh, I hear you're a distinguished author." And I thought, Christ, I'm not a distinguished author. Famous, maybe well read, quite well successful, but distinguished, never mind. Anyway, I digress. So now I can, because people know who I am, and there are people read it and so get in contact with me and say, obviously, I think you're fine. You've got this wrong. And my impulse always, when someone phones me up and says, emails me or something and tells me I've got some detail wrong, is if it's like an interesting thing like policing or architecture or something, I just go, aha, you are now my expert on this subject. And if they don't run to me, and some of them have, then they become my expert. But when I started the first book, no, I was doing it all by guesswork, the internet, and occasionally phoning up Scotland Yard and asking them questions to annoy them. And I basically, if you get the tone right, I think what happened is I lucked into the attitude, the police attitude. And I did that by ignoring everything I'd ever watched on television. It's very important. It's very important if you're going to get policing right, is to not go, just forget everything you've ever seen, except maybe Happy Valley. And even that is a bit kind of depressive. Right. Yeah. They're very funny. They're like all emergency service people. They have this very, very black sense of humor as a kind of form of armor. But they enjoy their jobs, or they stop doing them. People don't stay in the police if they suffer from serious trauma or stuff. They get out. Some of them have like 10, 15 years career and then collapse. So it's not always like straight away, but you just have to remember that that's the kind of attitude. And also, you know, I'm a cheeky Cockney geezer. You know, with a slightly weird mixed family background, I admit. So I'm North London, isn't it? So Peter's North London, isn't it? And I just kind of channeled him, and he was a police officer. So I lucked in. It's one of the things I lucked into. Now I get a lot of those details correct because I have someone I go, what happens when you do this? I also have like a full set of Blackstone's law for police officers and things like that, from which I extract these amazingly stupid acronyms that they use and get my management speak out of and things like that. And also when Peter is studying for various exams, I check to see what's kind of a question that he might be looking at, because there's always a lot of humor to be had in the kind of like in the organizational structure of the Metropolitan Police. So
Ben, how are you? This you might not be, but are you clued up on the old Cockney rhymes?
No, I like everything else in my life. I have to look them up. It's like my Yiddish, right? I got a little bit of Yiddish, I've got Cockney Yiddish, right? My dad never taught me Yiddish, which I am really cross about because it would have been such a good language for swearing in that I really wish he had. But he was one of these, I have walked out of the ghetto and I will put it all behind me kind of people. And so therefore, there's no Yiddish for me, bastard.
Oh,
wow. And because my mum wasn't Jewish, so therefore she didn't have me Yiddish at all. And she refused to teach me Welsh, which is tough. I crap family that way in terms of kind of diversity.
Well, do you know what? I'm a Welshman, but I can speak very basic Welsh, but I've tried to learn multiple times. It is so difficult to learn. And me and languages just don't get on. So like having something like Cockney rhyming in London, especially kind of in the older days, was brilliant at creating an old like community-based original language. Is so unique. But that kind of thing is faded out now.
It's been replaced what they call boringly MLE, which is multicultural London English.
Yeah.
That actually has a lot of Cockney in it. It's deceptively. So when I was doing the Abigail book, and she's like a full 13-year-old girl, right? So I was sitting on the tops of buses at home time, listening to the kids with my headphones in, pretending to listen to music while I was making notes. And they code switch. They will code switch between estuary. They will code switch from estuary to MLE to posh English if they think they need it for something, right? Like RP, not RP, but BBC, right? And sometimes if their parents like from Bangladesh or something, another language entirely. And it just gets, and you hear them shouting it back and forth across the top of the bus. It's not like you have to avoid it. And it's fascinating. I find that very fascinating. But fortunately, Peter is just old enough that he still speaks with an estuary accent. Otherwise, I'd have been totally fucked, basically. I have a vocabulary. It's like, God, I have to keep looking. It's like the architecture and everything else. I have to keep looking at my vocabulary list and go, okay, that's there, in it. I've got that.
Ben, I was going to say you talked about your own life and writing career in terms of acts. And going back to the very first Rivers of London book in particular, it seems like the act element was very important. Did that play into the writing process, and did you sort of plan for that? Because I don't see, you may have just done it from the seat of your pants, but I think there was probably quite a lot of planning involved in terms of there's so much that you go into in terms of obviously just the Rivers of London themselves and all the different representatives and the personifications of the rivers that you have. Did that take an awful lot of planning to get that level of detail right?
Planning is not really the right word. No, planning doesn't give you detail. Planning gives you structure. Detail comes from sitting down and just going mad. Right, detail comes from like details like writing yourself into something, and you think a good example. Dr. Abdul Waleed, right? Dr. Abdul Waleed. I needed a pathologist. I hadn't thought of a pathologist before he turned up. I have the scene. He walks into the room. Pathologist. Shit. I don't know. Scottish Muslim. Go. Right. And that's it, And then I had to sit down and work out why? Is he, where did he come from? What's he done? Did he convert, or was he born, raised? And I decided he was kind of gastroenterology's answer to Cat Stevens, and that was kind of like, completely dates me as well, I might add. And I thought that was kind of fun. That's kind of a fun background. Now he's like everyone's favorite character, but he came up on the spur of the moment. Same with Sarah Goulet. Same with a lot of the characters. They just turn up. And some of them aren't very interesting, and so they never reoccur. And then the interesting ones reoccur. It's a sort of horribly Darwinian process whereby you get one scene, and if you're boring, you never come back, right?
I like that. Interestingly, though, you talk about planning, Chris. In the background, Ben, behind you is a massive whiteboard. And you mentioned earlier that you're colorblind as well, which is quite interesting because what I'm seeing behind you is basically a chart with a lot of letters and numbers, I think, and a lot of words that are different colors. So is that something you are aware of? You can see those colors?
That is a progress chart.
Okay.
That is me keeping track of how much money I get when I finish each book as an incentive to bloody finish the book.
Okay.
That one there is like things I'm supposed to do. That's like a general list of things to do. That's today's list of things to do.
Nice.
So, I mean, it's boring. It's very boring. It shouldn't really show like things like floss. Okay. That's floss.
No. Interestingly, you've got a lot of things crossed out on that list, and I've seen now I can read that priority list.
I haven't done much writing. It's been a very structural day today. That's why the 250, the 500, and the 750 have not been crossed out. Right, and what you'll see is days I don't do anything, then another day gets added onto that. So actually, that's worse. That's about 4 days of not having done any serious writing, which is quite bad.
So Ben, talk us through it. How do you break it down? You said about 250, 500, 750. Like, what does a typical writing day for you look like?
I don't really have a typical writing day. I just get up in the morning and I go training with my 71-year-old trainer.
Nice.
Who runs up hills in front of me going, "Get up this bloody hill, Ben." After that, I come home and I sit down in front of my computer, and this is usually about, I got to get home about, so I get, I'm out, I get up at 6, get out of the house, get out of the place about 7:30, get back about 9:30. Any burglars watching, that's the best time to come in. I generally come back, then I have a shower and I sit down in front of where I am now, right? And I set everything up and I look at my screen and then I go off and do something something else. Usually I eat, run around, lie on my back, scream. I write every day. I can't not write every day. I have to write every day. I quite like, there was a thing that I don't write very fast, but I write very consistently. So I write like between 127 to 750 words a day. 750 is like maxing out is 750. Average is between 250 and 300 when I'm doing very well. Some books have had lower averages. I don't revise. Some people write like 2,000 words and then they cut half. I don't. I don't have that. I'm nothing like that discard rate. I'm one of those people that agonizes over the sentence until it's right. And so, but I have a reputation for writing in quite a clean manuscript, which I like to keep.
Yeah.
Because I don't like rewriting. Because I'm usually sick of the book by the time it gets to that stage. Like, I don't have anything to do with it. I usually only start liking the last book I've written when Cobner's done the audio, and I listen to Cobner thinking, this isn't that bad.
Yeah, that's fascinating because a lot of people would expect somebody like, I think you would be considered quite a prolific writer. And I think a lot of people would be expecting you to be writing thousands of words a day. But I love the fact that, 250 is relatively achievable for some people.
Oh, yeah. But it has to be steady. You have to get like 250 a day.
Yeah.
Every day, right? So what some people do is they write like 1,000 words a day, but they only write 4 days a week.
Yeah.
Okay. My main unit of writing is the green. after Graham Greene. He used to write 500 words a day between about 9:15 and about 10:30. And then he used to go out and have affairs and guilt and Catholicism
for the rest of the time.
That's a productive day. Where was
I don't have a life, you see. Because success came quite late to me, I'm quite content not to have a life because I'm enjoying writing.
Okay, interesting then. If you haven't got a life in quotation, other than writing,
I haven't got a life.
Other than writing, what hobbies do you have? Because I imagine with writing a maximum of 750 words a day, that you have some time there. So apart from your training,
no, you see, that's where you're making this category error here. You're assuming I do 750 words at the same time it takes like Stephen King to write 750 words and then get the rest of the day off. No, it takes me 8 hours to write 750 words. Right?
I love it.
No, I research. I mean, when I'm not writing, I'm doing research. At the moment, I'm also working on some other projects that don't have writing totals, which is a bit of a culture shift for me. So
okay.
I'm the role-playing game. I have to read things and make notes on them, and that doesn't count as writing. So I had to retrain myself to consider that work.
So I imagine you mentioned that you give in a pretty clean manuscript that you edit on the way. Is that kind of accurate?
Yes, I edit on the way. I have a friend called Andrew Cartmill who calls himself my punctuation monkey. Because the reason I mean, it's not so much that I need someone to tell me where the commas are, although I generally need someone to tell me where the commas go. But I would hesitate. I'm one of those people that go, oh, does the comma go there? And spend like half an hour trying to remember. So what I do is I go, right, I'll just so I'll put the comma where I think they should go. Okay. So what I tend to do, but I don't like commas very much. I've noticed that I'm not a very comma-heavy person, whereas American copy editors love commas. They put a comma between every word if they could get away with it. I swear, like the Oxford comma. It's like, wow, you don't need it. I understand when you need an Oxford comma, but I don't understand just to put a comma everywhere just because, like, oh, I've got to put a comma before an and. Why have you put a comma?
You've got to pause.
But that's my one thing because I don't know grammar well enough to have any other kind of grammatical things. I know how to do. I can put the apostrophe in the right place on plurals and ownership and things like that. But it's useful to have someone. He also just goes, "This makes no sense. Who's this person?" And this character's name has changed halfway through the chapter, right? Well, which can happen to anyone, right? And so therefore,
sorry, Ben. Interrupt there.
I'm actually handing it in. It's actually a lot of the kind of annoying things that the editor has to go through. I haven't done, and then so the editor can just go, I didn't understand that bit at the beginning. This needs a bit of tightening up. I'm actually unilligible now. I mean, I could if I wanted to. But that's just really stupid. Do you know how much it costs to get someone to edit your book? If your editor is good, you should consider them as a freebie. You don't have to do anything they say when you're my level of success. But what I do is I always reply to his suggestions. So if he says, I think about it and give him a reply on the manuscript as to why I'm not doing his suggestion. Because that way I'm sure I'm doing it because I want to do it rather than I'm doing it because I'm lazy, right? Don't want to edit something.
Love it.
And I also keep the books short so that I don't if they don't bloat, so I don't get kind of like that where there's only 200,000 words long. Because otherwise we could get one book every 5 years if I was doing that. I'm looking at you, GR. Get that book out.
Ben, one of the things I was going to ask you is, like, you're so good at blending the supernatural with the sort of norm. Like, when you read Rivers of London, obviously there's lots of craziness going on. You've got rivers personified, and exactly. And you've got, Father Thames and Mama Thames and everyone else involved and things like that. And Nightingale, obviously, he's got his own laws of how long he can live and magic and ghosts and everything going on. Like, how do you? My question is, what advice would you give to somebody that is trying to blend the supernatural into the fabric of the norm of every day?
Well, you have to make a decision of what you're doing. So, are you doing something where the supernatural? Are you changing the world so that magic works? Everyone knows it works, right? Like True Blood, right? Everyone knew who vampires had come out of the coffin, and everyone knew they existed, and there was like products aimed at them in the shops and stuff like that. Or you do what I do, which is what's basically a full masquerade world where the magic is hidden. The magic's hidden, and you've got to decide, why is it hidden? Why isn't everyone taking YouTube videos of people doing magic in the street? What's going on here? What's the mechanism that stops it from being revealed? And then you have to decide what genre you're doing. You see, you could do, and I think this is more redundant of the Shadow Police series by Paul Cornell. That's much more of a police procedural horror, because horror has an existential threat. The supernatural has an existential threat. It's much darker. It has a thing, or the Dresden Files, which is basically a noir fantasy. So it's down these mean streets a wizard must walk, right? Kind of like that first person laconic. The society is not important. The individual is the important thing in society. But I wanted to write a police procedural because I happen to like police procedurals. I like Ed McBain and people like that. So I decided I was going to write a police procedural fantasy. So the magic is not intrinsically evil or intrinsically good. It's just something. And then you have to decide, if you're going to do that, what you need to do is you need to make the mundane world as realistic as possible, because the more realistic you make the policing, the more fun it is to ram the fantasy into it, you see. So it's more fun if you have a police officer and you have, like, I don't know, like kind of Midsummer Murder type police officer, you never puts on gloves or anything like that. It's no fun putting fantasy into that because they don't follow the rules anyway. But it's more fun if you have a police officer who, when arresting a werewolf, has to make the calculation as to whether putting the werewolf in a kennel will be a violation of this person's European
love that.
Right? Or if you put them in a cell, is that going to be in violation of the animal cruelty regulations, right? And I like the idea of somebody who has that as a problem. Okay, that's what appeals to me about the story. So Peter Grant trying to maintain the Pelian principles, trying to uphold the law and what's now the King's Peace, right? In the face of people who laugh in the reality. I laugh in the face of reality. That's kind of fun.
It's fantastic. Fascinating. I love that. Just before we might have some more questions before we move on to the next part. If you have questions for our guest Ben tonight, we've been so engrossed in this conversation. None of the section videos have been played. We're not going to play version 3 after we've not played 1 and 2. If you have questions for Ben, please send them in now, and we will start asking our staple questions. And we want your questions as well. So anything at all, if you want to ask Ben within reason, any questions, please send them in. Chris, you were going on to a good rhythm with something there. I've just lost my train of thought. Because
it's all right. I've got 2 questions that I kind of want to ask about characters.
Okay, ask away.
Yeah, Nightingale. He's such a brilliant character. I just want to know sort of like where he came from. I know this is a sort of generic question. Him and Molly, the same sort of question. Like, how did they form in the fabric of your mind?
That's a very good example because they're 2 completely disparate ends of the character formation story. So, when you take an idea and you start, as a writer, I don't need to tell you this. As a writer, you end up with all sorts of weird bits of story in sort of like floating around in kind of storage bin at the back of your head. Okay, and when I decided to write Rivers of London, which was basically, I'm going back up, got to write a book, fantasy crime, right, go, right. I pulled out all the bits of the storage bits, the back of my brain that were sort of related to that. And one of them was a kind of idle thought. It wasn't really even a story. It wasn't like a plot or something. It was just that sort of thing you think of while you're standing waiting for the bus in the years before mobile phones, right? And it was basically, what if Hogwarts was a comprehensive? And it was basically, what if the magic school was like a comprehensive? And I thought you wouldn't get an owl, you'd get a social work. And I needed I needed a headmaster, and I wanted a sad kind of figure of a headmaster. And the headmaster had actually run the equivalent, like the posh equivalent of Hogwarts, which had died during World War II, right? Which had gone the way that the folly had gone, which is where I got that kind of sad kind of like thing from. And he just sort of like came over from that, and I just plonked him down as Nightingale. Then, of course, I have to explain why he's still running around kind of 70 years later. So you have to do that. Molly, and so he actually was developed quite a bit before he was inserted into the story. I knew quite a lot about it. Molly was literally, I have Peter walk into the foyer, and I was sitting there. I was doing a description of the foyer. I thought, I need something creepy. And I thought, one of those kind of scary women with the long black hair in a maid's uniform, and I thought, that was it. And Molly was born, and then she just then she didn't speak, and then you write the scene with teeth, and the tongue, and the teeth, and the bits of, just sort of went on from there, really, as a plot.
Love that.
I love it. And I don't want to go into the very first Rivers of London novel because I don't want to ruin it for anyone who's not read it, because obviously I highly recommend that you go and start there and go work your way through. I don't really know how to phrase this question, but it's a much beloved production that's referenced in the novel. Why was that? Yes, I didn't want to spoil it for people. I don't know.
I don't think that's much of a spoiler because quite a lot of people have no idea who Punch is anyway. So
yeah, but I wanted to know why Punch was so significant. And
I'd have to spoil it anyway to explain, because I was working at the Waterstones Covent Garden, and I was researching by going out for my lunch hour. And I was standing in the portico of the Actors' Church, and I looked up, and there's a plaque that explains that this is the site of the very first Punch and Judy show recorded in Britain, by Daniel Pepys, by Pepys, in fact. So that's why Punch.
Yeah, no, I just think it's genius, and I love the whole concept of obviously Father Thames and Mama Thames, and just how much you've. This sounds weird, but put London through this series, because it would be a sort of an area of London in terms of the rivers that I, as an outsider from up north, didn't know much about. But I feel like through reading your books and being introduced to new characters, I'm sort of learning more about the city of London and the surrounding rivers and things like that.
Well, you've always got to remember that Britain is the kingdom by the sea, right? And the kingdom by the sea is linked to the sea by its rivers, and this is true up north as well as down south. I'm the book I'm writing now. I'm just finishing off. It's set in Aberdeen, which has two wonderful rivers who make an appearance. And in fact, everywhere I go, they say, "Why is our river not in the book?" It's because there's not enough time. And one day I will put the Strid. I'm determined to put the Strid in the book, or something, because it's just so scary and it's a wonderful river. So, what was the question? Sorry.
I suppose it was more of a sort of like a fanboy statement, but I suppose the question is, why rivers, and why did you decide to create characters of rivers, and how do you do that in terms of how do you decide what personality is attached to the river?
Mama Thames came from the same place as Nightingale. She was the social worker, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have a Mama Thames, it implies there's a Father Thames, right? Because she's not going to go above Tillington Lock, let's be honest. So, there's Father Thames, and then you've got like a father. So Father Thames is obviously, the king of the travellers. I always imagine him looking like Steptoe, basically, and lives in a caravan or a boat on the upper reaches. That as soon as so I got hold of a map of London, of rivers of London. Now I knew about the Fleet because I lived over the Fleet, and I kind of vaguely knew about Tyburn, but I didn't know about the other rivers. And I looked at the map, and there's a river called Beverley Brook. That's somebody's name. As soon as I saw that, I just went, that's a young woman, Beverly Brook. God, like, so that just became like that. And then once you started doing that, it just gets out of hand because you suddenly discovered there's hundreds of the bloody things that, and some of the personalities are really obvious. Like Fleet Street is obviously personality, obviously of the media. Tyburn flows down through 3 of the most expensive places in housing areas in London, and then under Buckingham Palace, and comes out either side, right, of the Houses of Parliament. So she's not going to be the goddess of kind of like discreet little small things, is she? She's going to be the goddess of backroom deals and cigar smoke and things like that. And so these people just came up. Ephra flows under both Peckham and the Brixton Market. So, that was immediately who Ephra was and everything. So you just kind of like, they just suggest themselves. And then there are some rivers I haven't worked out the personalities to because I just haven't thought of something for them to do. I mean, and sometimes you have to because the story requires them. So you have to really stretch yourself. So Neckinger, I had this Neckinger. So because they used to hang pirates at the mouth of the Neckinger, I decided she was obsessed with pirates and wearing pirate ones. Little 8-year-old girl wearing pirate things and sleeps in a bed made out of genuine recovered timbers, pirate boat timbers from being recovered from the Thames and things like that. And these things just kind of start coming to you. Beverly Brooks is so South London, so suburban South London. So she's the goddess of snogging on the sofa while while your parents are upstairs and you're snogging on the sofa with and that kind of stuff, like going out with a hose, filling up one of those little plastic things and washing your car on Sunday. She's sort of that goddess. Plus, I found out during the course of my research, London's career town, which I didn't know we had. I didn't know we had a career town. We have a career town. It's in New Malden. Right? If we were America, our career town would be off Oxford Street. No, we're Britain, so our career town is in New Malden, which is a suburb. So it might
Ben, I think you're onto something because very local river to me, which is very small. Not small, but it's compared to what the rivers you're talking about is very small. And I found a local story, and I've told people to look into their local history and historical stories because they can find something amazing. And it was a local little river. There was an old pub in the 1800s at the top of it. And they used to basically, it was like a pirate kind of gang. They used to lynch like travelers, and they used to find all these bodies washing up at the bottom of the river in the river mouth by the sea. And I found it this most incredible story just down the road that all these rivers have these historical stories. I think it's incredible that you've latched onto that and you've created a world out of it. I think it's brilliant.
Well, you have the River Dagenham, which used to have Britain's largest fishing fleet in it. Used to go out of the mouth of the Dagenham, where you could go now. You wouldn't want to get out there now, but used to sail out before London got that far. Sail out, catch the fish, drop the fish off in London. That's where Billingsgate, and it was one of Britain's largest fishing fleets based up this river. And there was like logs at the other end, so there was a big forest, and they used to cut down the trees, make boats out of them, and then go fishing in them. And as soon as you start digging into the history of anywhere in this country, basically, anywhere, everywhere, but particularly in Britain, you will find stuff like that. It's just ridiculous how much history and folklore, and you just dig it down. Oh, what's that?
Well, this is when people talk about trying to figure out a story if they're having like real trouble creating a story. I just like look at your local history. You'll find incredible like motivation. It's brilliant.
I love local history libraries. I go in, they have wonderful publications like trams in Hackney 1857 to 1873, and I just go, I have that. I don't know why. Have trams in Hackney 1857 to 1887 will be used for, and now I've got a ridiculous number of books on kind of that kind of subjects. It's probably one of the best history things.
And I need to ask you a question now. We're basically an hour into our show without doing the third part, which is a true sign that we're having such a great time. Our time has gone very quickly. So have you an extra 15 minutes to answer some of our random questions and the audience questions? If that's so good, we'll get into it.
So it's not like I'm
No.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we've got questions coming in from the audience, which is great, and we'll definitely ask a few of them. I had a question now that escapes me, but I think some of the staple questions that we have on the show, and I actually I was on a training course once as a paramedic, and apparently if somebody yawns, it's a sign that they are trying to get oxygen to their brain because they're interested. So yeah, I'll take that as a compliment.
Well, thank you. I put a big smile on this, so I can screenshot that picture later on. I think it's going to be brilliant.
Yeah.
On the other hand, people sometimes just yawn because they're yawning.
Yeah,
that's true. But I would prefer the paramedic description of trying to get oxygen to the brain because they're interested. I guess we have staple questions, so I'm going to ask you the staple questions. One of the first staple questions is: if you could take any character from fiction and make that character your own, what character would you choose and why?
Oh, Jesus, that's a hard one. Well, it's a toss-up between Ivan Volpatrol or Samuel Vimes, I think. I think those are the two characters. I would nick one of those two.
Nice. Would you add them
you
to
may have made them up. I don't know who they are.
Ivan Volpatrol is a side character in Bujold's Volkozigan universe. And Sir Samuel Vimes is one of the main characters out of Pratchett's Discworld books.
Would you add them to your own work, or would you create
something? No, I'd
new?
run off and make loads of money selling them as spin-offs. That'd be silly.
Excellent. Okay, if you could take the ending of any story, whether that be a fictional story in novels or in TV series or a movie, what ending would you take and change, and why?
That's a really difficult question.
You can pass if you want to.
I think I'll pass that one because endings are the endings. If you can't start messing with fictional endings.
I think you can.
Yeah, that's a good answer. We've had that before.
Yeah, but I can't think of any offhand. I mean, I could probably think of like several hundred if I thought about it for a week or two. But now,
no problems.
So if you had to invite two of your characters to dinner, who would you invite to dinner and why?
Well, I'd invite Molly, and she could bring the dinner.
Yeah, that's good chat.
Yeah, that's good. Well, actually, you want to go round to Molly's to dinner because she doesn't come out. So, God, that's a hard question. Yeah, I'd like to. I'd have dinner with Vivara and Molly. I think
good
that
choice.
would be the two people I had. Because I'd want to know about her experiences in the Great Patriotic War. I think that would be quite an interesting history.
Yeah,
cool.
And we have quite a morbid question next, which we're gonna go there. You're on your deathbed and you're looking back at your writing career. What would you be happy with? What is success to you? Well,
all of it. It was my non-writing career that has been horrible. I've enjoyed writing. I enjoy writing. I sit down and I write. It makes me money. It's better. It's best. But if it doesn't, it's not best.
Yeah.
But it's still better than just most of the things I've done in my life, I think.
I can't believe we haven't done into that. I really wanted to. Not in a bad way, just to see how you got back on that track, or how you got back on the bus. But it's a testament to how much we've enjoyed the show so far. That we have
really uninteresting, and it involves a lot of waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning and writing. Basically,
so, Ben, our sort of other staple question that we have is: we're very much aware that we're on the internet, and this video and recording might outlive us. So, let's say somebody is going to take on your collection of works in 100 years' time, and they're going to be asked by a publisher, we love Ben's work. Can you do something with it? What would your advice be to them? What would you want them to do?
They can do anything except write prose. They can turn in graphic novels, holograms, whatever is like au fait in 100 years' time. It's just as long as they don't write prose. I don't want any necro literature. I've made that very clear to my son, who I'm leaving everything to. Like he said,
nice.
You don't do that.
Does your son write already?
I don't know, but he might be tempted.
Love it. He might do. Okay, what we're going to do is, because we're aware we're pressing on time and Ben has a Friday evening to enjoy himself with.
I was going to watch some telly, then go bed.
Oh, what do you watch on telly, Ben? Anything particular?
Well, I'm watching a lot of. Well, I have to be really careful about what I watch on telly because I've got very low tastes. I've got very.
Are you into Love Island at the minute, Ben?
I don't like reality shows because as a writer, I feel that they're demarcation.
I agree.
But, I'm watching. You go, obviously, I'm watching Suits.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Like 9 seasons of it, and it's
Yeah.
a very fun watch you can do without kind of like making me want to rush off and write a thriller or something or whatever that is.
Yes,
I have no urge to write a lawyer, so you have to be very careful not to stimulate yourself in the wrong direction when you're writing books. So you don't go off and go, "Oh, I should be writing a space opera." Oh no!
Yeah.
So I have to be careful. Apart from that, I'm watching True Detectives because anything with the word detective in gets my attention. And Masters of the Air, which I fast through the boring bits and just concentrate on the bits of the planes getting shot down. Mostly.
Isn't it right? Yeah.
Which
It's
I did
certainly
with Band of Brothers, and
it's certainly not a Band of Brothers or a Pacific yet.
no, I mean it's very good. I mean I'm enjoying it, but I've never been very interested in. I'm a terrible person in that I'm not very interested in people's personal lives, so I'm not really interested in the dilemmas and the personal lives of the pilots, particularly. That might change when we get to the Red Wings. I'm quite interested to see what they do with the Red Wings later. So that's an interesting period of history. So I'm quite interested to see.
Isn't it annoying though how a new series you have to wait a week for?
I like that because I'm a terrible binger, and so therefore it's quite good if I have to wait for something. Otherwise, I watch it all in one go and don't get any work done.
But that's what I'm like. I prefer to know what the next thing is, because if I wait a week for the next episode, I forget almost where I've come from.
Well, I like it because if I don't rush back and turn it on, I obviously wasn't that interested.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it makes it good. Also, remember, I'm ancient, and so therefore grew up with television. Television was like that.
You're not ancient, man.
Do you have a favorite?
I'm getting my bloody train pass in about the next 5 days. I get my London travel card thing.
That's a positive. I mean, travel is not cheap these days.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Like now the Elizabeth line has opened up bits of London I couldn't conveniently get to. So I'm going to do a lot of mooching around Southall, I think, places like that, and Wembley that actually used to be quite hard to get to, and now much more easy to get to and more interesting. And interesting places in their own right. There's a lot of interesting places that I haven't done yet, like Crystal Palace and the Periphery. A lot of the Periphery I haven't done, and they're all fascinating in their own way. So
I went to a pub in London last year. I've not been to before. It was during a charity event, and I was coming home, and I met up one of my ex-army friends, and we sat. He took me to this pub, and we sat in the pub, and then suddenly the floor started shaking. My pint was shaking, and I was like, "What the hell is going on?" And he said, "Yeah, that's the underground, just going under the pub." I had no idea. I was terrified.
See, well, that's it. I mean, I know this is true of a lot of other cities, but as a London, that's the beauty of London. It's even walking around sort of like the West End or something. I occasionally just turn down an alleyway and go, "Where the fuck am I?" I grew up here. I have no idea, and then you come up, I've walked past this like gap in the houses like every day.
Incredible.
And there's like little things tucked away and down hills and in ponds, and
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Chris, let's get on to some of the community questions, because there are some in the chat.
That is taking our attention away. I mean, we're dragging this out in the best kind of way.
I mean, after all, it is the bloody writers' community thingy. So
yeah, that's true.
I'm clipping that all day long. That's going out on the internet. Chris, I'll put the questions up. Do you want to ask them?
Yeah, go for it.
Let's go for the first one there.
So, how do you keep track of everything in your stories? Do you keep a story Bible or series Bible, or just remember everything?
I made
somehow?
a decision around book 4 that I was going to need to keep track of everything. So I was going to make a big database, and then I didn't. And so I got to about book 7, and I was relying on things like the Follypedia on the internet, and which is not always 100% accurate. And also doesn't have the things that I know that nobody else knows. So basically, about 3 books ago, I hired someone to basically go through the whole thing. And we have a thing called the big list, and it has every character. I haven't used it much yet because I've been in Aberdeen with only the core characters. I haven't had any of the characters. But when I'm in London, I have to make sure that everyone's eye color matches up and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's how I do it. Yeah. My advice is do it with the first book, especially if you think there'll be more books. Start doing it with the first book, or use World Anvil or one of the many kind of Scrivener, or one of the many things that allows you to keep this information track this information, because it drives you nuts. And people, these days people will text you and they will email you or put you on Twitter, and they'll go, "Oh, I think you'll find that in the book 3, this character." Brothers, and you've got them having 7 brothers, and you think,
Ben, question: when you mentioned you hired someone to go through it all, had they previously read some of this, or were they completely having to go through it?
No, they were people that knew me. I mean, I didn't hire a completely new person to do it.
That would be mental.
It would be mental. It would be totally mental. And there's always the opportunity we might get, like one of those books where you have like an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
It might be useful for that one day.
Okay. I love the fact that there may have been a job description. You're probably going to tell me that it wasn't, but I love the fact that there may have been a job advertised. Write a big list for the rivers of London, and then the job description.
I mean, there was a description of what I wanted, right? Because you can't give someone a very vague title like "write stuff down." You got to tell them what you want.
Write a big list.
How you want the information? What information is? Because some information is more important, like things like names of books and stuff, magical books and things that you put in like that. You don't want to repeat your character names too often, so you have to make sure you don't. You have a list of the character names, and so I had to make a list of what I wanted. But no, it was someone I knew, and I said like, "You want to earn some money?"
Yes, we do. Yeah. I know that there's been people on the show that literally write questionnaires for the characters, and I think that is, for me, mind blowing. But they literally interview the characters.
That's a very good technique that I've never used. I mean, there's a lot of really good, like write a bio for your character, write a description for your character. I never do that because I'm too lazy.
Me too. I think that's.
And half of my characters just turn up, like we said, like with Molly, like with Sargali, like with Dr. Wally. They just turn up, and then it's like and then you kind of retrospect.
Okay, next question. Thank you, Halo, for this, and thank you everyone tuning in tonight. I didn't say that at the start. I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much. Halo says, "What parts of the storytelling are easier to convey in novels and in scripts, or either or?"
Okay, well, for a start, transitions are easier in novels than they are in script, and I will demonstrate this by quoting something from Somerset Maugham, which is that afternoon they went back to the hotel, and the next day, you see, and you've just done a whole evening a transition to the next day in less than 5 words, right?
Yeah.
If you were doing that in a script, you'd have to see them going back to the hotel, then you'd have an establishing shot of the next morning, and then you'd have them doing whatever it is the next morning. I mean, you can elide that, but if you elide it too much, the audience is sitting there going, "What the fuck is happening?" So, or you have to have a caption or something. So that's one of the things you can do with storytelling. You can mess about with time in storytelling. In novels much easier than you can because people think about things in the past. You can do interiority in novels that you can't do in scripts. In scripts, everything's got to be on the. If you want something funny, it has to be visual, or someone has to say it, right? A lot of Peter Grant, the humor in Peter Grant, is just like in a monologue or things like talking about like mad things, and he's talking about these mad things and responding to mad things, and so therefore. These, humor and everything they're just 2 different mediums. And then in comics, you have another layer, because in comics you can do things in comics that you can't do in scripts. You can't do in film or television, but you can do in comics. Like splash pages are a good example. You turn over the page, like great big image, like flashing, right? that's a lot of fun. You can do, like in comics, you can do ironic contrast. So you can have like dialogue that's going on somewhere else over an image. You can do things like you can have dialogue, but you don't know who's saying it, because if you did it in a script, you'd hear the voice, you'd know who was probably know who was saying it if they were a main character. But if it's just in a caption box, you don't know who's saying it unless you see the balloon coming out. All of these things are a lot of fun. Structure is way more important in scripts, because you have things like conservation and detail and things like that in scripts which you don't have in books. In a novel, you can be rambly and scrambly, and you can have little side things happening just because they're funny. In a script, you can't really do that. It's why when you're watching like a 44-minute American detective show, if the janitor gets more than 2 sentences, he's probably the killer. Yeah. Because why would the janitor have more than 2 sentences, right?
Yeah.
Ben, do you feel like that you've now found your niche in creativity? Because on your website, you've clearly got a history of writing screenplays, comics, and you've even got songs listed on there. But now I feel with your
the songs
your
are
series,
not seriously. The songs are not serious,
but they're there.
Yeah, but they're fun. I'm trying to do a version of If I Was a Rich Man, which is If I Won a Booker.
Yeah.
But I can't get some of the rhymes right yet. One day I'll get that.
Please do.
I might get my brother to sing it for me, because my brother's a musician. Get him to do it. If I was
Have you been to the Harrogate Crime Writers Festival?
So what?
The Harrogate Crime Writers Festival. Have you been?
Only once. They never had me back again.
Oh, really?
No, they didn't like me. I'm too sci-fi.
Well, I know they play gigs. You should definitely play a gig with that song.
I'm not going to play a gig. If you heard me sing, you would know how ridiculous that was. I like writing these songs, and I put them on my website because it's my website, and I can bloody well put my songs on there if I want to. But
absolutely.
They're not serious. They're not serious. But I do recommend my 2 favorites are there are 20 Ways to Kill Your Character, and You Got to Write a Sequel or Two Boys is one of my favorite things I've ever written, to be honest.
Nice. We've got 2 more questions from the community, Chris, which we, as Ben reminding us, we need to serve more because we haven't. If your publisher, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If your publisher asked you to set one standalone book in a city outside of England, what would you choose?
Well, I've already got 2 books outside of London. I mean, and I'm writing 4 books now, actually, because I've got one novella set in Germany, in Trier, one novella that's going to be set in New York, and one novella that's set in a small town in Wisconsin. And the current book I'm writing now is set in Aberdeen, which is a fascinating city. My publisher would never ask me to do that, because my publisher didn't like me going out of London the first time. They were worried that if I went outside London, no one would read the books. They go, no, nobody wants to go outside London, which proved wrong, but they were very worried about that. God, Lagos.
Nice.
I've set something in Lagos because I've got lots of friends in Lagos and I can just phone them up. So I don't have to go. Because I've been to Lagos a couple of times, and it always takes me like 3 weeks to recover after I've come back from Lagos. I've always got
sounds like a good trip.
And it's hot. Oh God, it's hot. But it's a fascinating city.
And the other question that we got from the community, and I think this may be the last one that we've got from the community, is why novels, novellas, and graphic novels?
Well, novels is where I started. The novellas started because Subterranean Press asked me to write one and offered me money. In that famous, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse, money. And once I've written it, I found I quite like writing the novellas, and they're a good medium for doing side stories because they're not too long. So they're fun to write, like an Abigail one and a German one and an American one and a Nightingale one. They're kind of fun. Then the graphic novels, I always wanted to write a graphic novel. And I got to the point where my IP was valuable enough for me able to bribe Titan into letting me write a graphic novel. Yay! See, this is like one of the advantages.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's why I wanted to do them. That's why I did them.
And Ben, Yeah, I was going to say before we go, I'm going to ask you because I think I read this on Twitter somewhere. Rivers of London has been optioned.
Rivers of London every year since before
every
COVID.
year. Right.
We're still waiting. We're still waiting.
My question was: are you excited by the prospect of seeing it
I
on screen?
I was sort of 14 years ago. I've got kind of a bit more kind of jaded since then. It's a very expensive. I call it Schrodinger's TV series. In the it might happen, it might not. One day we will open the box and there will either be a TV series in there or not, or possibly an angry cat. And I get excited. I don't get too excited because I've worked in television. And if you've ever worked in, if you two worked in television, if you've ever worked in television, you'll know it's amazing anything ever gets made at all, ever. And so therefore you can go to endless meetings and do endless development work, and then it's just like the financing falls apart. Or the last time COVID happened and that fell apart because of COVID. This time we're getting about as close, without giving too much details, as I've been before, but it's an expensive show. It's 10 million an episode. It's a slow horses level of money show.
Wow,
crazy.
It's an expensive show because it's partly because it's set in central London.
Isn't that amazing?
So and we burned down Covent Garden and things like that. So
yeah, exactly.
Apparently, water is the most expensive thing. Actually, we were like, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that. And there was a preliminary budget. It said, no, you can't do all this water. It's really expensive.
Wow, Ben, there's one question that's just come in. If you don't mind, just ask it, and we can end after this. But it says, "Hi Ben, although you didn't know how it was going to be a series as such when you initially said, do you have a game plan for a series arc and know an end point?"
No, because it's a detective series, and detective series don't have endpoints. Right? It's not like a Song of Ice and Fire where people are going to come screaming over the wall at some point. It's not building up to something. It's a detective series. So you have your detective and you have a crime, and he solves the crime. Next book. Detective solves crime. That is the nature. That is the nature of the detective series, and his life continues. So you have events in their lives, and sometimes things take me by surprise about what they're going to happen, and they go in and they alter the kind of trajectory. But there's no end point. I will stop writing them when people stop buying them. Basically,
that's amazing.
I get bored of them.
Yeah, and obviously your detective series is not like an Ian Rankin detective series where Rebus is inevitably going to retire and die, because Peter Grant could effectively live for a long time with the aid of magic.
That's not even the point with me, because I'm taking note of Rebus. I deliberately made my character at least 30 years younger than me. So, but by the time Peter reaches compulsory retirement age, I will be dead. So
genius marketing. Love that.
Yeah,
there will not be that difficult novel where he retires and then comes back in some secondary capacity later.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Go out in a blaze of glory. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone massively over, and thank you for being such a sport in that respect. Right. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you, and yeah, thank you so much for joining us on the Writing Community Chat Show.
Thank you. I've had a lovely time. Are you going to put this up on YouTube?
It will be on YouTube. Tomorrow I will upload the podcast. People can check it all out. And if you could share, that'd be amazing. People who tuned in, please hit the like button. Leave a comment in the YouTube video. If you want Ben to answer a question, I'm sure he'll be game. Leave us some questions in the chat and we can pass them on to him. And thank you for your support and tuning in. Whether you're watching it back, listening back, or watching it live, we appreciate you so much. And we will be back next week with another show. And I hope you have a great weekend, everybody, because it is the weekend, the best part of the week.
Yes,
it is the weekend.
Unless you're a writer, case it's just the same.
Yes,
just the same. Every day it's the same.
If you have a word list like Chris Hooley does, Ross Young, please keep on to him. Get him those words out, and he'll get the work done. I'm sure he will at some point. But yeah, thank you so much, Ben. You've been wonderful, Chris. Awesome as always, and you guys in the chat, brilliant. So thank you so much, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.